Sie scheinen ja noch nicht oft eingeheizt zu haben.
Hab ich auch nicht. Bin ja auch normalerweise...
Den Gackel und den Karl Theodor.
Soviel ich weiß, ist Herzogin Ludovica mit Prinzessin Helene und...
It may sound a little cruel, but I believe there are fairy tale love stories that are only written to end in pain. Romy Schneider and Alain Delon are living proof of that. Once the most beautiful couple in Europe, two bright stars of world cinema, young, famous, and seemingly having everything. But in that story, only one person truly moved on. Romy Schneider was not that fortunate. She was one of the most famous actresses in Germany and also one of the great stars of Europe at the time. But later, people remembered her more by a chilling title, the Queen of Tragedy. Too many things happened in her life to the point that people began to wonder how could any human being, no matter how strong, endure that many upheavals. If you think you already know Romy Schneider, then perhaps you have only seen the lights and have not stepped into the darker part of her life. A difficult childhood and her mother's ambitious stage play. Romy Schneider, born Rosemarie Magdalena Albach, was born in Vienna on September 23, 1938, just 6 months after Austria was annexed into Nazi Germany. Acting was almost a family tradition, as Romy's grandmother, Rosa Albach-Reti, was also a major star on the Austrian stage. But for little Rosemary, life from the very beginning was nothing like the glamorous image of her family. From the moment she was born, before she could understand what love from her parents meant, before she could even drink warm milk, she was left behind at just 1 month old because her parents were busy focusing on their acting careers and sent her to live with her grandmother. And whenever she had a chance to see her parents, it was often during moments filled with their conflicts, even though they tried to hide that truth from their daughter and the media. They did not truly love each other. Perhaps they came together only for the spotlight. Her father, Wolf Albach-Reti, was a stage and film actor, and her mother, Magda Schneider, was also a stage actress. At the age of 4, her parents divorced. From then on, her grandmother continued to raise her. Later, Romy was sent to a girls' boarding school in a convent. By the age of 15, she transferred to the Cologne School of Arts. During her years at the convent, Romy often took part in school plays. She loved the stage. She had talent. But what saddened her most was that her mother almost never had time to come watch her perform. Then, when Romy turned 16, everything shifted. The mother, who had been absent throughout her childhood, suddenly became deeply interested in her daughter's career. It was Magda who first brought Romy to a film set and recommended her for a role in the movie Wenn der weiße Flieder wieder blüht, a film in which she also appeared. Thanks to her impressive performance, the film became one of the most famous German films of the 1950s. Her role even left a stronger impression than her mother's leading role. At 17, under the stage name Romy Schneider, Rosemary became internationally famous for her role as Princess Elizabeth of Bavaria in Sissi. After that, every year, she received new offers from directors. However, Romy turned down a huge amount of money to avoid continuing with Part 4 of the Sissi series. At the time, people found this decision hard to understand since that film had made her name. But Romy felt trapped in her family life with her mother. On the surface, her mother always appeared as a strong support guiding every step of her early career, yet she was also extremely controlling and expected absolute obedience. So Romy decided to reject all the scripts her mother introduced in order to quickly escape the control that had surrounded her for more than a decade. But early success comes at a price. Her mother was not the only force that exhausted her. Romy once said about her early years, "Everything I know I learned through cinema, because at 14 I left school and began acting. It is very hard for me to see myself objectively. I remember nothing from my childhood, that time when I worked non-stop on film sets." After becoming a film star in her home country, the actress went on to conquer France. There, director Luchino Visconti helped her achieve success both on stage and in film, leading to a flood of offers from French directors. And of course, that success came entirely from Romy's extraordinary acting talent. In every role she delivered emotions completely to the audience, even the smallest and most subtle ones. People loved her not only for her beauty and fame, but for the almost unbelievable depth of her immersion in her roles. On screen, Romy Schneider always shined, smiled, and seemed incredibly happy, but in reality, that was only in the movies. In France, she met the handsome and famous actor Alain Delon, the man who would later play a dangerous role in her fate. Beauty often comes with tragedy, and Romy's private life became a chain of seemingly endless suffering. Their love story began 24 years earlier in 1958 on the set of the film Christine. At that time, Alain was 23, gradually establishing himself as one of the most promising young actors in France. Romy was only 20, a radiant beauty from Austria who had already captured the hearts of audiences across Europe through her roles. From the very first glance, something like an electric current ran between them, something everyone on set could feel. It was not just attraction, as director Pierre Gaspar Huit later recalled. It was more like the moment two souls recognized each other. Their connection was so powerful that he had to rewrite many scenes because what happened off camera was more captivating than anything he had scripted. Their 5-year relationship quickly became legendary. They were young, beautiful, talented, and madly in love. The European press followed their every-step romantic vacations on the Riviera glamorous premieres, where they could hardly let go of each other, and quiet moments in cafes where they seemed to live in a world of just the two of them. In 1959, they got engaged, and all of Europe seemed to erupt with excitement. Wedding plans were prepared, venues were reserved, and the press was ready for what was expected to be the most spectacular wedding of the decade. But as both of their careers began to move in different directions and the pressure of fame grew stronger, cracks started to appear in what had seemed like a perfect love story. Things changed when Alain was invited to join a series of Hollywood films that could turn him into an international star. But that meant leaving Europe and leaving Romy for months. And during that time, Alain betrayed Romy and became involved with a woman named Natalie. Alain Delon's betrayal caused Romy immense pain because she was still in love with him. She left France for Germany and threw herself into work. And there she found another deep relationship. After that heartbreak, she went on to marry the German director and actor Harry Mayen. This marriage may have been a way for her to reconnect with her homeland after the controversy of moving to France. But the marriage itself was far from peaceful. Mayen had his own career in acting, directing, and writing. Two artistic personalities living under one roof was never easy. Added to that were the emotional complications from Romy's past relationship with Alain Delon, and conflict was almost inevitable. Even after their divorce, Mayen remained an important figure in Romy's life. They had a son together, David. The tragic death of David at the age of 14 would later nearly destroy Romy. That pain came after the marriage had already ended, but it showed how tightly a star's private life and career could become intertwined. In 1975, she married Daniel Biasini. He was not a film star, but a photographer and journalist. Perhaps that once gave Romy a sense of normalcy away from the harsh demands of cinema. She gave birth to her daughter, Sarah, who later also became an actress, Sarah Biasini. But even this new life could not guarantee long-term stability for Romy. She continued to struggle with old wounds, professional pressure, and a feeling of never truly finding peace. Daniel was also often seen going out at night and flirting with other women. So eventually that marriage also quickly collapsed. After going through 3 relationships, it seemed that Romy was constantly searching for true happiness in her life. But one heartbreak followed another, and in the end, she remained alone, as if she had never truly been loved. The despair after the sudden loss of 3 loved ones, and the shocking scandal involving her biological daughter. Romy Schneider's life was not sad only because of one unfinished love story. If it had only been Alain Delon, perhaps people could still call it a wound of love. But for Romy, pain did not come just once. It came continuously, wave after wave, as if life never gave her enough time to breathe. Few people know that when Romy had just married her next husband, Daniel Biasini, it should have been a new beginning. After old heartbreaks, after years of being scrutinized by the press, she had the right to hope that this time everything would calm down. But only a few days after the wedding, Romy suffered a miscarriage. A joy that had not even had time to take shape turned into loss. And that was only the beginning. In 1976, another tragedy happened. Romy's youngest son died after a traffic accident, and her husband was also seriously injured. For a mother, no wound is easy to put into words when it involves her children. Outsiders can read it as a line of news, but the person living through it has to live with it every day, every night, in every silence inside the house. This haunted her for a very long time because her son died before the two of them had a chance to make peace. That burden of loss was too heavy, pushing Romy into deep depression, and she turned to alcohol and stimulants to forget the pain. After the death of her ex-husband, then her son in tragic circumstances, everything became too much to bear. After that, Romy gave birth to her daughter, Sarah Magdalena Biasini. But this birth was not easy either. Because it was premature, her health declined severely. Romy's body began to react after too many years of work stress, sleeplessness, and endurance. By 1979, she had to undergo surgery to remove one kidney. From that point on, Romy no longer carried only emotional pain. She also had to live with a body that was constantly exhausted. The pain, the sleepless nights, the memories that refused to leave all of it, gathered into a weight that was very hard to see from the outside. On screen, she could still be beautiful, still act still, make the audience believe in her characters. But behind the camera, Romy was holding up far more than people imagined. Then, in 1981, the biggest blow came. David, Romy's eldest son, died after an accident at the family villa. He was still very young at the time. While trying to climb over a fence, David had a serious accident and did not survive. When she received the news, Romy nearly collapsed. That mother had already lost too much, but this time, the pain seemed to cross every limit. Before David's accident, Romy Schneider had a fierce argument with her son. The two had a major conflict when David did not want to go on vacation with his mother and her new partner, at the time, Laurent Pétain. In one heartbreaking detail, David even asked to live with his stepfather, Daniel Biasini, instead of staying with his mother. Romy reluctantly agreed, hoping her son would change his mind. But that never happened. There is a quote often repeated as if it were her inner voice: "I buried the father, I buried the child. I am not separated from them, and they are not separated from me." Just one sentence, but enough to show that Romy no longer lived with loss as a memory. She lived with it, carried it, sat beside it, woke up with it. After everything, the child who remained by Romy's side was Sarah Magdalena Biasini. Sarah later also entered the entertainment world, becoming an actress and gaining recognition through the film A Man and His Dog. But Romy's shadow was too large. When you are the daughter of an icon, every choice is judged with harsher eyes. Sarah once became entangled in criticism and public noise in her career, including a romantic scandal with a married director while working on a film. From a radiant star, Romy began to be called the Queen of Bad Luck. Her life sank into darkness with no way out. Worse still, the paparazzi gave her no privacy at all, even photographing and spreading images of her son's body in the morgue. An almost unbelievable cruelty. The final days. Her partner at the time, Laurent Pétain, tried to hide her pills, but Romy found other ways to get them. There were accounts that she received medication through an intermediary connected to Marlene Dietrich. Books were hollowed out to hide pills inside. The drugs included stimulants, sleeping pills, amphetamines, used to keep going in a body that was already far too exhausted. Romy Schneider was pulled into a self-destructive spiral with no escape. And then, on a fateful day in May 1982, the final tragedy happened. Romy and her partner returned home after dinner with friends. Laurent went to sleep while she stayed at the small table she used as a desk. The next morning, he discovered her body. Authorities ruled out the possibility of violence, but the question remained, was this a natural death or an accident related to alcohol and sleeping pills? Officially, the cause of death was recorded as cardiac arrest, a conclusion that still made many people doubtful even years later. After all the tragedies she had endured, especially the death of her son, it seemed that her body and soul had been completely exhausted. Someone close to the situation once said there are people who live until they are drained and then they simply collapse. After decades of devotion to cinema, Romy had almost nothing left for herself. She had given everything away, both her life and her strength. One haunting detail is that her tombstone bears her birth name, Rosemarie Albach, as if it were a return to her roots, in complete contrast to the turbulent life she had lived. Alain Delon, her famous former lover, arranged for her son David to be buried beside her, a late and bitter reunion. News of Romy Schneider's death at the age of 43 shocked all of Europe. For many people, it was a tragic ending, but also one that felt painfully fitting for her stormy life. So why did people call her the Cursed Queen? Part of it came from her most famous role, Empress Elizabeth or Sissi. Many people noticed strange similarities between Romy and the historical figure she once portrayed. Both became famous very young. Both felt isolated in their positions. Both resisted the standards imposed on them. And most painfully, both lost their sons under tragic circumstances. According to one analytical article, Romy's life seemed like a modern version of the very characters she had once played. Two parallel fates full of glory, but also full of loss. Another chilling detail is the film La Passante du Sans Souci, which was shot after her son's death. In the film, she acted alongside a young boy who looked very much like David. This made her emotions on screen feel painfully real. Someone from the crew recalled that when they filmed the scene of the boy playing the violin, Romy completely broke down. Her tears fell uncontrollably. It was no longer acting, but real pain spilling out. More than 100 people on the crew, and not one of them failed to cry. It is hard to explain this coincidence. Why was a boy who resembled her son chosen? Why did the story in the film reflect her own life in such a frightening way? Because of these strange coincidences, many people believe that Romy's films seem to reflect or even foreshadow her life. It is a thought that makes many people uneasy. In addition, there were also observations that during that period, the European film industry was controlled by people who already had status or connections. Many stars were not ordinary people who rose from zero, but often already had a foundation or links within elite circles. Romy Schneider, a brilliant film star with a tragic fate. Romy Schneider did not leave behind just a sad story. She left behind a cinematic legacy that is very hard to replace. In Europe, her name is still mentioned as one of the greatest figures who ever crossed the boundaries between German-Austrian and French cinema. She did not belong to just one national cinema. She belonged to an entire European memory where beauty, talent, and tragedy sometimes blend together to the point where they can no longer be separated. What stands out most in Romy's career is that she achieved something not every young star can do. She escaped the shadow of the very role that brought her to the peak. For German and Austrian audiences, she will always be associated with the image of Empress Elizabeth in the Sissi film series. That role turned Romy into a symbol of pure, elegant, and romantic beauty. But for Romy herself, it was also a golden cage. The public wanted her to remain the gentle princess on screen, while she longed to become a serious, more complex and freer actress. That is why her transition to French cinema is what truly defined Romy Schneider's stature. In France, she was no longer just the Sissi queen. She became a mature actress with depth, willing to take on roles filled with pain, desire conflict, and loneliness. Films such as La Piscine, Les Choses de la Vie, César et Rosalie. L'important c'est d'aimer. Une histoire simple and garde à vue helped her move beyond the image of a youthful idol and become one of the most important actresses in French cinema of the 1960s and 1970s. That success did not come only from fame. It was recognized through awards. Romy Schneider won the César Award for Best Actress for L'Important. C'est d'aimer, the film that brought her her first César. She later won another César for Une Histoire Simple, confirming that she was not just a beautiful star, but a powerful actress capable of carrying psychologically demanding roles. What makes Romy's legacy special is that she was celebrated on both sides. The general public loved her and the film industry respected her. She had the beauty to become an icon, but her acting carried enough pain, truth, and sharpness to go beyond that beauty. On screen, Romy did not perform like someone trying to make the audience feel sorry for her. She often conveyed the feeling of a woman trying to stay composed while already shattered inside. That quality is what has kept many of her roles alive for decades. After her death, Romy Schneider's name continued to be preserved in many ways. In France, the Prix Romy Schneider was established to honor promising young actresses in French cinema. This is one of the clearest signs that Romy is not just a memory of the past, but also an inspiring symbol for future generations of performers. The award bearing her name serves as a reminder that cinema always needs female figures who have both appeal and depth, and who dare to go beyond surface beauty. In Austria and Germany, her legacy has not faded either. Many streets, squares, cultural institutions, and memorial events are associated with the name Romy Schneider. The fact that an intercity train was named after her running between Vienna and Villach carries a deeply emotional meaning. It is as if her homeland still wants to keep her within the movement of everyday life. Not only in museums, not only on old screens, but even on journeys across Austria, the name Romy is still spoken. But Romy Schneider's legacy is not only in awards or places named after her. It also lies in the question her life leaves behind. How can someone so loved be so alone? How can a star who had everything on screen end her life in sorrow, exhaustion, and financial difficulty? It is this contrast that ensures her story is never just an ordinary film biography. Romy is a symbol of a very specific kind of tragedy, the tragedy of someone turned into a legend by the public at too young an age. People loved Sissi, loved her beauty, loved her love story. With Alain Delon, loved the light she brought to the screen. But behind it all was a woman constantly fighting her family, the media love loss, and the perfect image that audiences imposed on her. The death of her son David was the final cut in Romy's life. After that tragedy, she was almost no longer the same person. The final months of her life were covered in pain medication, alcohol illness, and the relentless pursuit of the press. When she died at 43, the public did not just lose a star. They lost a woman who had lived too many lives in too short a time. The material you provided also emphasizes that after 58 films and more than 2 decades in the profession, she passed away in a reality that painfully contrasted with the brilliance she once had on screen. So when people speak of Romy Schneider today, they do not just remember a beautiful face. They remember an actress who moved from the innocent symbol of German cinema to the melancholic soul of French cinema. They remember a woman who was both adored and wounded by that very adoration. And they remember that sometimes the greatest light on screen is created from the deepest darkness in real life. Romy Schneider was talented, radiant, loved, awarded, honored with awards in her name, with streets, places, and cultural symbols bearing her name. But in the end, her greatest legacy is not just fame. That legacy is the feeling that remains after the screen goes dark, an uneasy beauty, a talent that refused to be confined, and a life that leaves people both in admiration and in sorrow.
This content is for informational and entertainment purposes only, thoughtfully compiled from public archives, historical records, and classic articles. While we strive for accuracy and balanced storytelling, some details from Hollywood's golden age remain unconfirmed and should be treated as speculative. We encourage viewers to draw their own independent conclusions. If this journey through Hollywood's shadows resonated with you, please leave a gentle like and subscribe with the bell icon so you never miss our next chapter. To continue uncovering the forgotten tragedies of the Golden Age, simply select the video on your screen right now. Thank you for keeping their memories alive.